Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to talk today about the emotional freedom techniques. This is something I've been doing with clients since 1998. And here we are in 2025. I found it at a time when I wanted to incorporate something with my hypnotherapy clients that would add an element of working with the body instead of just working with the mind. And as timing, things happen for a reason. A colleague of mine said, I'm taking this course learning the emotional freedom techniques, which I'd never heard about. And she said, maybe you should come take it with me. So I did. I signed up for it. Best decision I think I've ever made. I'm still using what I learned in the way I learned it today, all these years later. Gosh, that's 27 years later, and teaching it to my clients. Although I have to say, as effective as it is, clients are sometimes a little put off by it. Let me give you an example. I had a client come in one day and I taught her EFT, and she came for next session, and I sent them all with a handout and the points and the wording so they can do their home fun or home play on their own. That's a requirement. She came back in and she said, that tapping stuff you showed me, she said, that was so weird. And she paused and she said, but it really works. And she's shocked. She is shocked and surprised that it works. And I'm thinking, would I have taught that to you if it didn't work? But I didn't say that. I just said, well, yes, it does work. She bought into it to the degree that she was dragging people into the break room at work and tapping on them. Oh, you're upset about work today? Here, let me show you this thing I learned. This is so exciting. She became such a convert. And I think it makes perfect sense because it is so effective, and it's effective so quickly that we can get rid of negative emotions, guilt, anger, fear, or grief that interfere with our natural, joyful nature. And then we can really experience physical and emotional health. And isn't that what we really want? Physical and emotional health. Now, I'll share a personal thing that I experienced when I was in this class. Naturally, we paired off and we tapped with each other in our practice. And I tapped with a colleague on a belief that was pretty limiting. And I'd held onto this belief for a long time, probably most of my life at that point, because I'd had some physical challenges that limited my life experience, and I didn't want to dump them on any relationship I was in. And when I told my boyfriend about it, of course, I'm crying, and he's saying it's not a problem. Well, it was a problem for me. So we tapped on that, and we did, I'm going to say, 2 rounds of tapping. 2. And I started to laugh because what I felt way down deep in my solar plexus, even below my solar plexus, I felt this bubble of emotion coming up that was pure joy. And I laughed because that belief that I'd held became the silliest thing. I still think it's funny to this day. It was the silliest thing. Why in the world did I ever believe that? And that day, I also made a decision, maybe I would call it an epiphany, that our true nature is one of joy. We are meant to be joyful. And EFT is one of the ways that we can get back to who we really are and come from a place of joy. Now, I think we'll go through a little bit. We'll talk a little bit more about it. Maybe we'll do a little breathing exercise depending on how much time we have today. But before we do any of that, let me just point out that as effective as EFT is, and I know some hypnotherapists who've stopped doing hypnotherapy and they just do EFT, and I don't understand that, honestly. Everything is effective when you have a client in hypnosis. Everything. So when they're in hypnosis and you do EFT with them, either on yourself or have them tap for themselves, it's more effective. It's way more effective than if they're just doing EFT. They can get on their own without well, not on their own necessarily, but without that trance state where they're more in touch with what's going on internally, where their focus is inward. So when I teach EFT to my students, I teach day one, I teach them EFT. And on day two, I teach them EFT combined with hypnosis because I want them to see the difference. And everybody does see that there is significant difference when they're in that state of hypnosis. So it becomes another tool that not only can we do with clients to help them, it becomes a take it home and use it forever tool for them. Because my job, and I think all of us feel this way in hypnotherapy, is to empower our clients so that they're not thinking they're dependent on coming in to see us. And that's the only way they can make this change. They can have this change on their own, wherever they are. Which reminds me, I was showing a colleague this. We were at a restaurant. We're sitting on this nice patio having a meal. And I was talking to her. I was very excited. I told everyone, no matter where I was, and offered to tap for them or demonstrate the tapping. When I first learned it, I'm a little over the top when I learned something new. So I'm telling her about it and I'm showing her the tapping points. And she looked around and she said, do you just do this anywhere, anytime? And I said, oh, apparently she's a little self-conscious about my behavior. And I said, sure, I don't care what anyone thinks, A, and B, if they ask about it, it's an opportunity to share and, I don't know, give these people my business card. If you want to know more about this, call me. Yeah, I don't think that helped her. She didn't seem happy that I still didn't seem happy, but thank goodness I've reached a point in life where I seriously don't care. People think I'm weird. I probably am a little weird and proud of it. So back to EFT. Maybe, well, here's a thought. Maybe all the EFT I've done over the years on other people, which I benefit from when I tap with them, I'm also benefiting, has helped me let go of that being self-conscious and caring what other people think. Because how does that serve anyone? It really doesn't. So EFT, the way it was explained to me when I learned it, what we're doing is tapping on the beginning and end points of acupuncture or acupressure meridians. And the tapping helps balance out the disruptions or the zzz in the energy system. Because the belief is in EFT that the underlying cause of all negative emotions is an imbalance in the energy system. And when you tap, you're really saying, let that go, wherever it is, let that go. And it does. There's a shift that happens that you cannot hold on to that negative emotion anymore. Doesn't matter how long you've had it. Doesn't matter where it came from. It can be resolved in a really short period of time. And once memorized, the entire round of the basic recipe can be performed in probably about a minute. So it's not a big time commitment. Now, here's one of the things that I've noticed over the years that hypnotherapists want to change about EFT. They want to tap on something positive. Instead of tapping on the negative, they want to tap on what they'd rather have instead. And so tap in the positive instead of tapping out the negative. But I come from a background of living with an alcoholic, growing up with alcoholics, 7 years in Al-Anon. Let's start with what's really going on. Denial is not just a river in Egypt. So let's admit what's happening and release that. Then we can get to the positive. But if you don't clear out the negative, how are you going to bring it in? I think of it as clearing the playing field. And if we clear the playing field before we put something positive in, we're not just adding something that's, oh, wait a minute, that negative's still there. It could creep back up. You can't just overlay it. Let's let it go with the EFT, with whatever else we're doing with hypnosis. And then when we put the positive in, there's no pushback. It's going to be accepted. So what do we use it for? Well, We want to be specific. This is really easy for me because anybody who follows astrology, I'm a Virgo, used to be a bookkeeper. Oh, I really like details. So we want to be detailed in our approach. So instead of saying, for example, I'm tapping on that incident when my dad hit me in the kitchen when I was 8, makes more sense than just that global issue of abuse. We're tapping on specifics, a memory. And we don't have to tap on all the memories we've had. The analogy that the developer used, Gary Craig used in his manual, is think of it as bowling pins. You've got the 12 pins out there. When you bowl, the idea is you want to hit the center pin at just the right angle. And if you do it right, all the other pins fall down. Even if you don't hit it quite the right angle, maybe 8 out of 12 fall down, or 10. I don't remember how many there are. I haven't been bowling in a while. So it's about finding that core issue and tapping on it, and a whole lot of other things go by the wayside at the same time. That's really a beautiful thing. Think about it. So there's a basic recipe for EFT. There's a setup, the sequence. There's a piece that we won't talk about today with our limited time called the 9 gamut, which Gary doesn't even use anymore. But you know what? That one brings up some laughter, and that's a good way to break what's going on. A little pattern interrupt, and then we repeat the sequence. So the setup addresses psychological reversal, and that's just a blockage or a polarity reversal within the energy system caused by the subconscious self-defeating negative thinking. A lot of people are still doing that. We're human beings. In fact, we don't have to think positive 100% of the time. If we can think in a positive way, a little over half the time, we're way closer to where we want to be, because we want to make it doable, don't we? We're not trying to be perfect. One of the things I learned at Al-Anon is we're working on progress, not perfection. Because honestly, I've said this, I don't know for how many years, nobody likes you if you're perfect. Because we all know we're not perfect. And if you're the only one in the room who is, oh, I can't be friends with you. Because then now I'm going to feel worse about myself. So nobody wants that. But the subconscious self-defeating negative thinking, that's literally the cause of self-sabotage. And this will let that go. So let's just for fun, how many of you know the tapping points for EFT? 1, 2, okay, we all do. Excellent. So just for fun to walk through, so when people are watching the video, they can tap with the group. Let's do something really simple. Let's tap on restricted breathing. So take a deep breath and rate the restriction in your breathing. And write the number down. So it's a scale of 0 to 10. So that high number, if it's 9, that's you're not breathing well at all. We're looking for no restriction. So the high number is going to be representing the restriction. Then we're going to tap, and we're just going to tap on this restricted breathing. And the wording is pretty basic. Even though I have this restricted breathing, I deeply and completely accept myself. And we're going to say that 3 times. So 2 more times, even though I have this restricted breathing. Nope. There we go. I deeply and completely accept myself. Even though I have this restricted breathing, I deeply and completely accept myself. Now we tap just back of the crown chakra. Now we just say this restricted breathing. This restricted breathing, beginning of the eyebrows, bone outside the eye, this restricted breathing, bone under the eye, this restricted breathing, under the nose and where the chin dips, this restricted breathing. We can do them both at once. Collarbone, where it dips in right under the collarbone points, this restricted breathing. Under the arm, ladies, where your bra strap is, this restricted breathing. This restricted breathing. Inside the wrist, this restricted breathing. And then take another deep breath. Notice what's changed. What's the new number? Write down your new number. And who noticed a change from that? Susie. Everybody did. So Susie, unmute and tell me what number you were and where you are now.
With that one and only round, I went from a 7 to a 5.
That's significant.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How about you, Melissa?
I was pretty good. I started at a 4, but I'm down to a 1, and I could really feel that expansion. Felt really good.
Good. Kelly?
I began at a 6 and I went down to a 3. Pretty
50% improvement. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. When I was teaching this in a class years ago, one of the ladies in class went along with it, even though she's a breathwork instructor, and she, in her mind, has perfected breathing perfectly. And she didn't think she'd see anything, any change at all. And she said at the end, after we tapped a couple of rounds, she said, there's a different quality to my breath now. So even though her number started out 0, no restriction, there was still a shift. So what can we use this for? Well, it's extremely effective for cravings. I've used it with my weight clients. You know, when you're really overly hungry, you're going to eat anything in sight. While dinner's cooking, you're snacking on potato chips. Yep, we've all done little things like that. So if you use some EFT and tap on this over-the-top hunger I'm feeling, the hunger will decrease by sometimes as much as 50%. Now, when you sit down to eat, you can eat a normal amount of food. You're not going to overeat. Tap for cravings. We don't tap for cravings when we're having the craving, because that craving will often override any thought about any rational thought that says, maybe you should do some tapping. Maybe so. But if you're tapping a couple times a day, 2-3 minutes of tapping, maybe twice a day for those pesky cravings, that's funny. I don't have those anymore. We did this in the class for Gary passed out Hershey Kisses, and he had some ladies up front who wanted to quit craving chocolate, and I was curious, so I tapped on craving chocolate because that is my favorite snack. I justify it because dark chocolate's good for us, but maybe not in the quantities I consume at times. So we tapped, and he went through the whole thing. He was very thorough. And after they had tapped for a couple of rounds, they unwrapped the Hershey Kiss. They smelled it. Did that bring it up? They tapped again. Now I'm going, and this is right before lunch, by the way. And so I'm smelling my Hershey Kiss. It has no smell. My intention was to satisfy my curiosity, not to give up my enjoyment of chocolate. It had no smell. So I thought, well, I'm going to eat it anyway. So I did. It had no taste and no smell. And I remember thinking, by gosh, this better not be my experience going forward. Better. And the next day, I was back to normal. But keep in mind, I started out with the intention of simply satisfying my curiosity. But the ladies up front who actually wanted to stop eating chocolate because it was a problem, they were extremely happy at the effect it had. It's simple. It's something you can do virtually anywhere. I'll tell you one more quick personal story. I had a relationship end, and I'm driving in the car, and I'm thinking obsessively about the man I'd been in relationship with. I didn't want to think about him at all. So I came to the red light. Oh, good, red light. I'm at the red light, and I'm tapping and tapping and tapping. And the light turned green, and I think I had done at least 1, maybe 2 rounds of tapping while the light was red. And I tapped on driving, and I thought, I was just tapping on something. I don't remember what I was tapping on. And a little while later, I thought, I was tapping those obsessive thoughts about, what was his name? Seriously, I could not remember his name. And that's about as effective a technique as you could ask for. So, comments or questions? What do you think about all this? What questions do you have about what else we could use this for?
I have a
Or what
question
do
about
you-
how many group sessions you've run for heartbreak for women and men using tapping. Not a bad idea.
It's an excellent idea. Yeah.
Mm.
Now, I learned tapping from a different lens, maybe than you, Catherine. It sounds like you were with the original. Um, and I have used tapping in my life for a long time and have a couple of different points. So, do you have any feedback on somebody that learned different points than you? I mean, they're almost all the same. There's just a couple of variations in there.
You know, we had an acupuncturist in class with us when we were learning with Gary, and he added in the wrist. He said this was a really important point. He added that one. And I'm thinking he might have been the one too that added the point at the top of the head. And I think those were not in the original. And Gary took it on because he said, you know, he listened to what the gentleman had to say. And so I've always added those extra 2 points in. But if you're getting results from what you're using, then I mean the bottom line is it's working.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a highly effective
Mhm.
method. Highly effective. If it can give you heartbreak amnesia.
It did, and I never had obsessive thoughts about him again.
I've always used the meaty part of the base of the thumb as
Yeah,
my first tapping point,
Gary said 2 fingers and halfway between,
the karate chop.
yep, karate chop point.
But yeah.
Because there are nerve endings here and here.
Mhm.
And that's why that's a good point.
I've always used it in a slightly different way, and this is just something that intuitively came to me to use it in this way. But I would have my clients begin by just closing their eyes down, and whatever the overarching issue is, boil it down to one word, feeling, and then have an organic picture come into their mind's eye that represents that feeling in the situation that they're experiencing, and then on a spectrum from 0 to 10, assign it a number and then do the cycles. Inevitably, the picture shifts when you get below a 5. And
Mhm.
then there's a better feeling that's overarching, and then I begin tapping that better feeling in. That's typical. I vacillate. Sometimes I'll just tap it all the way down using the first phrase, but then it's an intuitive thing. I just kind of switch it into tapping in the better feeling, depending upon what their picture begins to show, because it may completely shift. If it completely shifts and there's no evidence of the old picture, then I'm tapping in the new better feeling. What do you think about that?
I think if it's working for you and your clients, then it's perfect. I think, I think we have to I've stayed with, and Gary himself has changed how he does this.
Mm-hmm.
And I have found it to be so effective with the original method that I have not mixed it up. I do a lot of surrogate tapping with my clients. If they don't want to tap on them for themselves because they're in hypnosis, then I do surrogate tapping. I tap on myself for them with the intention it's to release, and it works just as well. But I think you have to take it and modify it to fit your style and the people that come to you, how you want to apply it.
I was just in LA a few days ago, and I'm in a hotel, and I'm walking out of the restaurant, and I see a woman doing this. And I walked past her and said, "Tapping, huh?" And she just looked at me. She said, "Yeah." She must be going through it. She looked a little stressed, but yeah, so you can do it anywhere if because it really does help.
Yeah, it makes those red lights when you're driving take on a whole different meaning. Oh, good, a red light,
Now that's saying something.
Right.
isn't it?
So Catherine, I have a question. Have you used it when your clients are actually in the state of trance, and how have you uh, outside of the surrogate element? Yeah.
I used to tap for them with their permission. I would show them all the points and I'd say, you can tap for yourself or I can tap for you. But they were in a big recliner. So leaning across the recliner, my arms would ache for a couple of days. So then I'd say, well, if I'm tapping for you, you have to sit in this other chair where I can reach you better. But I just give them a choice, and a lot of them will. It lightens their trance a little bit, but they don't need to be in a deep state of hypnosis in order for it to be effective. So it's worked out either way, whether I'm tapping on myself for them, whether I'm physically tapping on them, whether they're tapping for themselves. And if they tap for themselves, I tap right along with them on myself for them. So we're getting, any two people coming together with the
Right.
same intention is going to be powerful. Yeah. And then we can do some future pacing. We could even do future progression. To lock it in. But I get rid of the negative before I put in anything that's positive.
Yeah.
Really is good stuff.
It is, and
Definitely.
it's so simple.
Isn't it amazing how astonishing simplicity can be? Right? Some people get so locked into it's got to be complicated and convoluted, and the easy peasy lemon squeezy can be so profound.
It really is. It made such a difference in my life, and the clients that I've shared it with. For the most part, even if they think it's weird, they're way too polite to tell me up front. And then they find out, oh, well, that does work. Yes, it
It
does.
also serves as a pattern interrupt, and there's a reinforcement quality to the subconscious when you're working on any given situation with a client, right? So, in addition to recordings that you can give them for reinforcement, this is a great tool for them for pattern interrupt, just in general,
It really is, and I write in my notes what I've given them. So when they come back, first question for that subsequent appointment is, looks like we did EFT last time. How often have you applied that between sessions?
Yeah.
And usually they'll do it because it is simple. And I always tell clients, because a lot of people, especially my younger clients, they're self-conscious. There's, what? Everybody has access to a room with a place to sit and a locked door. It's called the bathroom.
Right.
No, but also people, you'd be surprised, because I always say, along with neuroplasticity, that's another one that's a great tool for pattern interrupt.
Yep.
And to be able to manage emotions and anxiety, and tough to get a handle on emotions. But I tell them it's a great tool, it's quick, but it's only good. It only works if you use it. And surprisingly, people are they're very comfortable being uncomfortable. So when you have to, a lot of times I find myself to have to remind them to use it, and I'll send them like little texts just as a reminder, and they will say, "Oh, I keep forgetting," because they're just used to spiraling.
Yeah.
The discomfort of the comfort of the discomfort cycle that they're in. So this is also a top of the mind and awareness thing that they have it to use. A lot of times they will forget.
And speaking of awareness, I tapped with one client. He wasn't motivated to study for the bar exam. And he said, and he'd already failed it 3 times. And that's why he was coming to see me and doing hypnotherapy. And I said, so why aren't you motivated? He said, I don't know. So we tapped on, even though I don't know why I'm not motivated to study. And he did part of one round and he went, oh, I do know why. And he had this insight that was profound. And I have them tap on, even though I don't know why I can't do this or I can't do that, and they will get an epiphany. Fascinating. It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, the perception shift that I check in for with clients afterwards. I will say, let's check in. Now, that didn't take long to do, and you feel so much better, right? Let's go back to your perspective from the beginning, and has it shifted in any way, and how now that you've done this? And inevitably, there is a big one. There's a big swing.
There is.
Big one.
As we mentioned already, we make life so much more complicated than we want to.
We choose suffering.
Don't we?
We do.
We're silly.
Unknowingly. It's again, it's an awareness thing, but it's absolutely true. This was really good, Katherine.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely.
This was fun. So I want to thank you all for your input, and thanks to everybody watching. I hope this gave you some new ideas about things you can do in your own life or maybe for your hypnotherapist in your practice.
Nice.
Until the next time. Bye.
Bye.